I acted like I was rich too. So mix up all the ingredients for your own self and then poof.
Put your oxygen mask on first and then help the person beside you.
That's how I got into roofing. That's where I am today.
Yeah. What'd you find out? Welcome to the Roofing Success Podcast. I'm Jim Aline, and I'm here to bring you insights from top leaders in the roofing industry to help you grow and scale your roofing business. Hey, welcome to another episode of the Roofing Success Podcast. Again, every time I ask you, I know some of you don't do it. Hit the buttons, press the things, write the reviews, the comments, the likes, the follows. Please do that for us. We really, really appreciate it. Today, we have the big fish, Benny Fisher. How are you, man?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. It's awesome to have you on. For those of you that have not come across you yet, you've been doing a lot of speaking and being out and about in the roofing industry, from starting your roofing company to more of your personal brand. What let's start off with like the story of Benny. How'd Benny get into roofing?
Well, that's a very colorful story. I never thought I was a fit for college. I tried college for a couple of weeks and realized it wasn't for me. Saw an ad in a car dealership, or I saw an ad in a paper for a car dealership. You can make $100,000 a year. So I'm like, you know what? That sounds like I could be more successful, have a little bit more money than what I was used to growing up. My dad worked in the steel mill. My mom worked at a hospital in admin, and I was like, yeah, $100,000 a year sounds pretty good at 18 years old. Let's go take a shot at that. So I actually paid $500 to go to training. Nowadays, we have to pay all of our people to come train, and we're lucky if we can even find people.
Yeah.
Back then, there was a class, I think 20 of us that each paid $500. It was a 2-week sales class. And by the time the class was over, there was only 4 of us left. And so when I look back at that, I'm like, well, that's a very interesting way to recruit and then onboard. And yeah, and I ended up getting my $500 back because that was part of the deal. Like, if you make it through, then they'll give you your money back. So it was kind of smart on them. But so I tried car sales for a while, and I did pretty good. But I was very immature, and I didn't really know what to do with the success. I'd have good months, and then I would not want to work and like want to party and hang out, and just was never very consistent. And then the seasonality of that in the north, cars kind of slowed down in the wintertime for whatever reason. People aren't as good in the mood. I mean, you're up in Minnesota. I'm sure it's kind of like the same thing. Everybody stops spending money from like probably November to February.
That's right.
It's because it's like a mindset thing. And so I kind of bounced back and forth from different car dealerships. I got fired from like every car dealership I ever worked at. I even got fired and then rehired by the same dealership 3 different times, which is very interesting. And so after I realized, or I thought I was just a big failure at that, I was like, maybe that's not for me. And, maybe I should just go get a real job like my mom's telling me to do. I went in and got a job at GE Money, and I was doing credit card collection debt for some of the different credit cards that they had, and ended up seeing a job offer for mortgages and to be a loan officer. And this is like probably 2005, 6-ish.
The fun times.
Before the crisis.
Yeah, the fun times. I was there with you. Yeah, the fun times.
Okay. All right. And so, again, I'm just this kid, they train you in a corporate setting in a cubicle, and they give you a script to read. You got a headset on. We're dealing with people all over the country. I don't know nothing about houses, nothing about home ownership, nothing about mortgages. I'm just talking. And, one day come in the office and they wouldn't let us go up to our desk because they said they shut the whole division down. 10 years later, I realized, that's because GE was smart. They saw what happened to the Countrywide. They didn't want to be, one of those big businesses that failed in mortgages. So they kind of saw the writing on the wall and cut us out. So then I was faced with another decision. I'm like, man, I'm running out of places I can get a job at without this college degree thing. But I always thought corporate was like the only thing to do in life, and if you didn't have a corporate job that you weren't really going to be successful. So I got a job at Verizon Wireless selling BlackBerries and, and adding phone lines to family plans for grandma and grandpa, because that was like, 2006, 7-ish. It's really right before the iPhone came out. And, I did really well at that, at the mall cubicle, and I was selling 10 phones a day, and I was on top of the leaderboard, but I got bored very quickly after I realized, how many days can I be the top sales guy every day? And because I would get bored. And so I would start the network, if you will, with the people at the mall, right? The girls that were working at this department, Victoria's Secret, the food court, I was going down to Dick's Sporting Goods. I was just like, I knew everybody in the mall, and I'd stopped hanging out at the cubicle. And I think, my number started to go down a little bit. I got fired again. And then the first time that I actually found a sense of community is I ended up going to a party one night, and I tried drugs for the first time, and I was like 26 years old, and I started selling drugs. And I realized, man, this is kind of fun. People need me. People need the product that I have. I'm having fun going to nightclubs. But I wasn't very good at it because, again, I didn't grow up in the streets, right? Like I didn't know how to I didn't know how to get my supplies. And, I remember getting evicted from my apartment one time, not having a place to live. I was actually homeless for 3 days because I was too embarrassed to tell my mom what was going on. And so I lived, I bought this beat up used minivan because I was basically broke and down to nothing, and slept in that for a couple of days with all my life's possessions in the back of it. Then I started to couch surf for a few months, and got back up on my feet. But there was other issues with that. Like I had gotten robbed at gunpoint one time trying to buy product in the downtown Canton, Ohio area, and very embarrassed about that. Of course, I didn't tell my mom or dad. I just kind of tried to deal with that myself, and eventually I got set up, and they raided my house. I finally worked my way up to where I had a nice little townhouse and a nice car and stuff like that. And the cops kicked in the door and said, "No, your time is up, sir." And at that point in my life, I thought, man, I don't have a college degree. I'm now going to be a convicted felon, and I don't really know what I'm going to do with the rest of my life. Luckily, because I never had a record and I was a pretty good kid at heart, I didn't have to go to any jail time. I did have the felony on my record, and I did have to do some probation, and I was on house arrest for 90 days. And I was living with my sister because I took everything I had, all the cash that I had, all the cars, the computers, just basically starting over. And I was working at a call center making like $9 an hour, soliciting blood donations. And that was where my life was at. And I was like, man, this is going to be hard to live like this. But I was committed to hey, I'm a knucklehead. I'm a screw up. I'm just going to sit here and take my punishment, and I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to grind away. Well, then my uncle calls me up, and he, was probably about 17, 18 years older than me. And for the last 20 years of his life, he had been living in Pittsburgh. That's where he met his wife, and he was in the roofing industry. And he had just went on his own to start his own commercial roofing company because he's always worked for people before. Was the superintendent and ran companies. And he was about a year in and said, "Hey, why don't you come over to Pittsburgh and help me sell and market my roofing company?" And I said, "Man, that sounds great. Anything to get me out of this miserable conditions that I was in, living with my sister, working at a call center with, some other interesting humans." They were great people. I just couldn't I wasn't having any fun, right? And I definitely didn't want to go back to selling drugs. I didn't want to do any of that. I was trying to do everything the right way. And so I moved to Pittsburgh and didn't know a single person. And I worked for him for 5 years, and then started my own business in residential because I had a passion for, I think through my days of dealing with, homeowners or, dealing with customers. And I really like the residential side much better than the commercial side.
Yeah.
Because I really like making people happy. And then with the advances in technology, with AccuLynx and EagleView and Company Cam, I was like, man, I'm just going to take all this cool stuff and I'm going to be the best company in Pittsburgh. And because there were no companies doing that, using technology at all, 8 short years ago. I mean, we're talking. I've only had contracting for 8 years, and now it seems like almost everyone's doing that cool stuff now. And I like to think that I was kind of a pioneer in Pittsburgh. And it's kind of fun to see. And then over the last few years, I've gotten out of the day-to-day so much. And I've always wanted to make an impact and help others and tell people my story. I've kind of just been doing that, all over the country at different shows in the roofing space. And I've kind of adopted those EOS principles, from the book Traction and Rocket Fuel to really kind of understand what the difference between a visionary and an integrator is, and understand how to get out of the day-to-day. And I think people like that. People want to live a life by design. And that's allowed me for the last 3 years to really work on myself, creating that time away from the business to be able to kind of heal and figure out why was I always a knucklehead? Why did I always try to look for love in all the wrong places? Why was I always, trying really hard to do great things, but they would always kind of keep crumbling down. And so I was able to kind of work on myself, and hopefully I'm becoming a better leader. And to where now I'll be able to give back even more to my company, to other people, entrepreneurs. And I think that's kind of how I got into roofing. That's where I am today.
Yeah. What'd you find out in that reflection?
Well,
Like,
I found out that I never really loved myself.
yeah,
And I feel like, and I've been on a lot of retreats, and I've been in done a lot of meditation, done a lot of studying about trauma and your environment. And listen, I mean, by all stretches of the imagination, I had great parents, they worked hard. But we can all learn a lot from our childhood,
yeah,
and I was able to go back and kind of forgive a lot of people for what I thought, maybe people had done me wrong or people that didn't believe in me. I never felt like I had anybody that believed in me ever, except for myself. And, when you're kind of out there, kind of like wandering on your own journey, like you're just kind of making your own path and you're trailblazing, but you don't really have any guardrails.
yeah,
That's really hard, especially because I grew up in a very strict Christian Baptist environment to where we had very strict guardrails, and that didn't seem like that served me either. But then when I got out to be 18, like I had zero guardrails, and that didn't serve me either. And I was trying to wonder, like, why was I? There's just a lot of people that put self-limiting beliefs on you, I think, when you're young, because that you got to fit into a box for them. And I don't think they do it with bad intentions. I don't think they know any better either. I think that there's just this lack of awareness that most of us have. And so I've been on this like self-introspection of trying to like love myself first for who I am, what my strengths are, understand that like I'm not perfect, and, to really love all humans for who they are. I think all humans are creators. I believe that we're all have a creative bone in our body, and we should be able to use those creative juices for good. But I think a lot of us don't get the opportunity to do that because it doesn't fit into somebody else's box.
yeah,
And so what happens is, we start to then think we're not good enough, right? And then if we think that we're not good enough, we have to go out and try to make sure that we are good enough. And sometimes we can do that in the wrong way, and sometimes seek attention. Like for me, it was like trying to seek approval and the love of others. And so I would go out and try really hard. And then when I would get let down, then I would get really depressed, right? I was basically taking on everybody else's feelings. And I mean, I could go on forever about that.
No, that
stuff,
makes like that's great insight though. Like, and a couple of things that it makes me think about is, that the thought that people don't believe in you, right? I think that sometimes maybe like it's the lens that they're looking at, right? So like I look at, some of my younger cousins and people in the family, and I'm like, oh, buddy, man, like stop like trying to give them some bumpers, right? Like, but the bumpers that I'm suggesting based on life experience, because I'm with you on all that past life experience, like helping them get guidance in, hey, stay between these lines at least, right? But as a youth, I wasn't listening to where the lines were at all, right? And that's a big thing. But I think that lack of belief, and you can tell me what you think about this. Sometimes I think that lack of belief creates drive in us. Did that create any drive in you? That lack of belief,
Absolutely.
Like I'm gonna prove to whoever it was, whether it was your family or or the world or your second grade teacher, right? Like, did that create some drive in you?
Yeah, absolutely. Always that, getting rejected and feeling like you're not good enough. I do think I was born with that driven gene. And I think that, your makeup is part genetic for like real, like your DNA. Like, I think you have certain genes that make you who you are, your personality. But I also then think your environment can shape your personality, right?
Yeah.
And then it creates your personal reality. And I listen to a lot of Joe Dispenza, and if you ever hear Joe Dispenza, he'll say there's a lot of things that kind of go together with your DNA and then your environment. And I do believe that yes, the negative forces in my life have created this like amazing positive things, right? And then, but without balance or guardrails, or first of all, a deep love for myself, instead of trying to do it for everybody else or trying to prove people wrong or trying to, like, I need to start doing things for me. And, I was always taught, serve others, serve others, serve others, right? Because, if I serve them, you will love me, right? Well, what I've learned is if I love myself, now I have more of an ability to actually serve others unconditionally and without expectation. And then when you can do that is when I think you can start to really master what I call happiness, because then there's no expectation and you can really just accept everyone for who they are and where they're at on the path and on the journey. And that leads to a more fulfilled life.
Put your oxygen mask on first, right?
Like, yeah, absolutely.
Put your oxygen mask on first and then help the person beside you, right? And a lot of times we go and we don't understand that in a lot of ways growing up. Another thing that I think about youth is that we don't understand the actual effort it takes. Do you think that you understood the effort that it would take you to get here when you were, in those early, kind of in your 20s, when you thought that you were putting an effort in the car sales business and things like that? Like, was it the same? Do you think that the same amount of effort applied, or that you were like, man, I thought I'd just make 100 phone calls and it would come to me?
I think that, a lot of us grow up, especially like in the Midwest, with this like amazing, like hard work ethic, right? But it's a work ethic that's just that. It's work ethic and I think then you have to be smart about your work ethic. And so I think that the strategy, I lack the strategy. Like I didn't have a good leader or a good manager teach me principles of like why I should do things. It was more just like sell the next deal, sell the next deal, sell the next deal. Well, if I keep doing that, I'm just going to be a really great salesman for the rest of my life. But like, what's next? Or like, is there anything else? Like, either what do I do with all that money I'm making?
Yeah.
Or what can I use these skills for to help make a bigger impact? Like no one really teaches you that stuff, right? Because, first of all, most people in management, they're afraid to lose their job to you. A lot of times, like especially back in the day, I felt like, they didn't want to teach you too much because they don't want you to pass them up, I guess. And I also learned there's a big difference between, especially in sales, where we're on that subject of being a great salesman and then also being a manager. It's two totally separate skill sets. And then leading people, it's another skill set, right? And so, and in most corporate jobs, most people just aren't aware. They're just not aware to even be teaching that or like trying to model that for whatever reason. And because of that, I didn't have good leadership, or I had to go figure it out myself. And it wasn't until I hit rock bottom in 2017, I actually overdosed 2 years into my business. Business was doing good. I had all the cool stuff in life, the big house, the fancy cars, good up and coming business. But inside I was, trying to keep it all together. And I would, take drugs to kind of like soothe the pain, right? And kind of escape. And I woke up I remember in the back of an ambulance gasping for my life. And here I had overdosed on fentanyl. And luckily, one of my friends was stopped over at my house to pick me up for a fantasy football draft. And he was able to call 911. But that was, I was in ICU for 3 days, and I was basically I stayed at home for 3 months because I was kind of embarrassed, even though I didn't tell anybody what happened, my company or out in the public, because I didn't know what to do. I was like, oh, people are going to like not want to hang out with me. They're really going to think I'm a fuck up now. It's like, it's going to be bad. Right. So, I kept that inside, but while I was doing the internal work, I started to like figure out like, all right, what's wrong with me? Like, how do I fix this? And then that's when I found, I thought my problem was my business, right? So first thing is, it's a business problem. If I fix my business, I'll fix myself. Well, I realized through that journey, it's me. I got to fix myself, and then I can fix my business. But I started with the business path first, and through those couple of years, I learned how to become more profitable, how to be able to have take that profit and hire better people. Then I found traction in rocket fuel. Yeah. And that's when I then started to figure out how to fix myself. And, not that we're broken as human beings. We just lack the awareness and the education to be able to self-teach ourselves, like in real time, like on how to deal with situations and have emotional intelligence and have being able to have meaningful conversations and be more present, because most of us are either worried about the future and we're super anxious, or we're still upset about the past and super depressed. And we're constantly living in two realities that actually aren't even actually here. Like, because right now is the present, and it's like, how do I learn how to be more present? And as I've been on that path, it's definitely changed my life. And now I forget your question that you asked.
That's all right. Let's go to the beginning of Big Fish Roofing, those first couple of years. So those first couple of years, it sounds like you started off doing pretty well. Like the money, you're making some money, or, things were happening, but, personally you had some things going on. But from a business perspective, what were some of those early lessons?
Well, the early lessons was like, man, I never made more than, 50, 60 grand ever in a year.
Yeah.
And, I made that in 3 months, owning my own, because I knew how to sell, and I had just been studying marketing. I've been listening to Gary Vee for the last couple of years on Facebook and YouTube. And I was like, cool, I'm going to come out with a, cool brand, and, I'm going to be called the Big Fish Contracting Company, because my last name's Fisher, and I'm kind of a big guy. So people would always chuckle at that. And I really did a good job with customer service. And since I was the only one dealing with customers, I was answering the phone, I was selling the deal, I was project managing, I was paying the bills. And I realized that I wasn't really good at all those things, trying to do them all like together. I did enough to get by, and I think it worked for the first year because I made like $300,000.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, I made it. Like, I'm rich. And I was like, and I acted like I was rich too. So I went out and bought, I was married at the time, and I had a 1-year-old, and, after the first year, she's like, oh, we need a bigger house. So I went out and bought a bigger house, and went out and bought, because then the accountant said we needed a write-off. So I went out and bought a Yukon Denali, and, like all the standard stuff that most of us contractors do the first couple of years, because we've never had anything our whole life. Like, and all of a sudden, like, we're blessed with like this money, and I barely knew how to balance my checkbook, you know what I mean? And so I learned that I was burning myself out. I realized that I wasn't a very good husband or a dad because I was still trying to learn from that. And I think a lot of times I was afraid of that. And most of the time I would hide myself in my business, because that actually I was better at. I was better at sales than I was at being a husband or dad, because those were 2 new skills I didn't even know about.
Yeah.
And then nobody teaches you how to do that, and so, trying to balance all those things at the same time. And then when after the first year, I started to like say, all right, I need some help. Like, all right, I'd rather give some of this money back and like not have to work as hard.
That's right.
And so I started hiring people. So I hired 3 people right out of the gate. I hired an office person to help me with like all the office stuff, and I just clumped everything into one big pile of stuff, bills and, just CRM stuff. And then I also hired a salesman to do all the siding stuff, because like I was getting customers that would request, they'd want to do siding. I'm like, I didn't know anything about siding, but like, I don't know, 1 out of every 4 customers would say, hey, do you do siding? And I'm like, all right, I'm tired of hearing that. I feel like I'm leaving money on the table. So then I found a guy that knew how to sell siding, and then he came in, and I sent him all my siding leads, and he started doing pretty good. And then I had a project. I was like, I can't babysit all these projects anymore. Like, I want to, I need to be out selling more, and I just need somebody to stay at the job site all day, because I would get bored at a job site all day. As much as I knew that was important to make sure that Jesus and Jorge were putting the roof on right and making sure the customer was happy, like, I couldn't just be tied down there. I'm a free spirit.
This seems like a theme, Benny. You get bored easily.
Well, I think that's I think that if I'm not doing something that completely fuels my passion and my purpose 100%. In life, that I've realized that like those things that actually don't serve me, and they actually don't serve the people that are part of that. It's a hard thing to explain to people that aren't just aware. Like, even sometimes customers, if I would have that conversation with an average Joe homeowner, they'd be like, why? Like, what do you mean? Like, I'm like, because like they don't know. Like everyone's doing stuff right now at their job that they can't stand. They've been doing it for 20 years. And they just keep doing it. And I just refuse to like be like that. And because I know that eventually that's going to lead to destruction in my life. Like, if you force me to sit in the office all day and do bookkeeping all day, I mean, please don't put any weapons or anything. I could I literally would hurt myself, I think.
I get it.
Because I know myself so well now, like, I have to be smart about like what I say yes to and what I say no to. And I also think at the end of the day, like, God didn't create me. I don't think God created me, Ben Fisher, to be a contractor. I think God used this business and this industry to like teach me a lot of things and to meet a lot of cool people and experience things. But I don't think like at the end of my life, they're going to remember Ben Fisher as the CEO of the greatest roofing company ever. I don't think that that's me.
Yeah.
I think that's where I'm at now in my life. And I think because, there was no one else to do it. But I don't think those are using my pure strengths. I'm actually aware of that, which, a lot of people are like, oh, what are you talking about? I'm like, dude, I got in this business, but like, I don't know, like because I went down a dark path and like, and I found it. I'm not saying amazing things didn't happen.
That's right.
And like good things are happening, but this is like, I'm 42 years old. Like we're just in the middle. We're just getting started.
Yeah.
And so, I definitely think there's other people that could probably run and operate a roofing company a lot better than me. I can tell you that.
Well, it sounds like you've done that, right? Because you've worked your way out of the things that you don't do as well or don't enjoy doing, right? You've done I don't know if you still have to jump in here and there, but probably
very rarely.
Yeah.
I mean, I probably should more. It probably show better profitability, but at the end of the day, I don't care about money anymore.
Yeah.
I realize money doesn't make me happy. And then because I love those conversations, because I've had negative. When I moved to Pittsburgh, I owed my uncle $1,200 because he paid off my fines. Yeah. So I've had negative money in my life, and I've had, millions of dollars. I'll tell you, like, they both can bring not happiness.
That's right.
They both can bring happiness at the same time too. And so it has nothing to do with the dollars in your bank account when you realize that, like, those external factors, if you're attached to those, like, that's only going to lead you usually to a life of like demise. Yeah. It's because it's temporary, right?
I think one of the things that I'd like to get you to express is because I think that's such a challenge for roofing contractors to get that, to become self-aware enough to know what they should move out of. How was that journey for you? What were some of those aha moments in your self-awareness that said, okay, this is leading me to the place of, man, I can work on my business, not in my business.
Yeah, so that's great, because I teach this a lot when I do workshops, when I go into other businesses and they need some help, and I talk to other entrepreneurs. That's what they want to know, right? Like, how do you go from salesman to CEO, or how do you even go from salesman to another career if you want? Like, after you exit your roofing business, like, what do I do next, right? And the first thing I learned, and I learned this in the book Traction, was the delegate and elevate, right?
Yeah, delegate and elevate, yeah.
There's a quadrant there that says, if you think in the top left quadrant, it's the things that you love and the things that you're great at. In the top right, it's the things that you like and that you're good at. Bottom left, this is the big trap box, is the things that you're actually good at, but you don't like. Yeah. You've been doing them so long. Like, for me, that was like project management. Like, I'm really good at managing a project, right? Because I'm using my sales skills and my communication skills to keep the customer and the crew happy, get stuff done on time because I want to make more money, because the faster I get it done, the happier people are, the more profits there are. So, like, there ain't nobody better in this world to manage a job site than Ben Fisher. I am confident of that. The problem is it doesn't spark joy for me after a while. Like, it's like once I'm not saying I'm the master, could I always get better, but there's a law of diminishing return. Like, yeah, I just don't want to do that anymore. Like, it's just not fulfilling enough, right? Like, I there's more juice in my side of me. So those are like, that's the don't like, but you're good at. And then the bottom right, to me, is the easiest thing to delegate first. Those are the things that you don't like and you suck at, right? So, like, it's the double whammy. There's no trap there. Like, for me, that was accounting. And I would think that would be accounting. For most entrepreneurs, it would be like admin work and like finances, right? For most purebred visionary entrepreneurs. Now, I know that there's some of you guys listening that are data guys, that are CFOs, and you guys have started businesses because you know that businesses are profitable and you're doing everything on spreadsheets and things like that. I'm not talking to you guys. You guys couldn't sell your way out of a brown paper bag. So no offense, but like, you need us creative sales guys to also help get things going. So first thing I did was like, hey, I got to delegate as much boring admin work as possible, because there's a lot of other people that's in their love box and that they're great at. Well, they would be scared to death to get in front of a homeowner and have to sell them something for $20,000, or go to a job site and watch a roof come off and put back on with Spanish-speaking crews, homeowners that are fearful, stuff flying everywhere. I mean, you feel like you're in like a mini Vietnam. You know what I mean? So, like, there's not very many people that are excited about that either. So that was the easiest one to delegate, because there's more people that want to do that admin and financial stuff. And so And the next thing was like, all right, how do I get out of this day to day in the project world? Because like, I want my customers to be happy. I said, I just don't want to be the guy there every day. Like, I want to sell them the chicken sandwich. I don't want to make the chicken sandwich. You know, like if I'm working at Chick-fil-A, like I want to be the guy outside, like waving to people when they come in, waving to people who come out. Hey, take the customer survey. How may I serve you? Like, I don't want to be the guy back there making the chicken patties. And so then I had to delegate that. And then I got to a point where like, you know, sales was becoming a bottleneck for me because like, if I'm still out there doing all the sales, how do I ever become CEO and like worry about all parts of my business? Because guess what I was not doing? I was not managing the person in finance or the admin. I was not managing the operations person at the project. The only time I was doing something if there was a fire. You know, I was like the chief firefighter. And so like the only time I would ever talk to those people in my company is if there was a huge fire. And by that time, you know, it was kind of painful, but because I'm so good with dealing with pain, because I've been such a knucklehead my whole life and I know how to get out of sticky situations, I'm really good at like getting out of fires, you know, but like that's not a healthy lifestyle, like overall.
Yeah.
And that's who I used to be. That's not who I am now. And so like that doesn't serve me. So like then I had to figure out how to delegate sales. And then I figured out how to delegate sales. And then it's like, all right, well, I still really love the idea of marketing and I love being creative and I like putting all the pieces in place. But you know what I really don't like doing is the data part of marketing. I don't like trying to track everything. I don't want to try to optimize and tweak every little thing. And like, I know you're a marketer, so like you can appreciate the difference between the creative side and then the execution side. It's two totally different humans.
Two different things.
And but everybody just clumps, because, you know, it's just marketing. It's kind of like in accounting when like, you know, your accountant can do your books and even your CPA can tell you what you owe in taxes, but they can't help you with a strategy for your business for the future. That's why you need a CFO, somebody that has strategic, you know, implementation and advice for you. So, you know, I realized at the end of the day, like the best thing that I'm really the best at is motivating, galvanizing, coming up with new ideas, speaking life into people, creating passion, creating enthusiasm. And there's just not a whole lot of jobs out there that allow you to do that full time. And so when I started attending more conferences and workshops and I started talking to other entrepreneurs, I found that, man, I really love talking to them. They really love listening to me. And like, I feel like that's a match made in heaven. So like I started a podcast, you know, first of all, because it's a little bit time consuming. I have to put a little work into it. And I didn't really want to go start another business because I wanted to be close enough to my roofing company where if they need help, I can just jump right back in. Even though I probably will screw a lot of things up, you know, I'm still close enough. And then, so now I've been, you know, working with Joseph Hughes at Contractor Dynamics.
Contractor Dynamics,
He's teaching people how to do social media and take their marketing department as a whole so that when they hire vendors like yourself, right, you can at least know how to work with a vendor to like come up with a creative plan and then like, you know, hold them accountable every week, have better questions to ask them because, you know, in marketing, it's the vast ocean. You know, you could have 100 people working in your marketing department if you want, and all have special little tasks. I said, but you know, most roofing companies, they're lucky even if they have one person waking up every day thinking about marketing, let alone having a full team of people. So to be able to manage all those personalities and SEO and social and pay per click and billboards and yard signs and graphic design and newsletters and emails and all the stuff that you got to do. You know, I'm trying to like teach people how to like just think of it as a big, like you're the general contractor of your marketing department, right? If you can think of it like that, you have to take it really serious and know enough to be dangerous. You don't have to know it all, but you have to know enough to speak the language so that way when you hire people, whether it's in your business or a vendor, you can help hold them accountable. And I find that that's the hardest thing right now in these roofing companies, even from $1 million to 25 million, is the lack of good management skills and good and good optimization, you know, and it's because guess what? Most of these roofing companies are started by guys like me. We're either really good salespeople or really good roofers, and we never really had a good leader or manager in our life. Hence, if we did, right? Still be working for them.
Yeah, it's the E-Myth also, if you've read that book. Like it's the technician who starts the business, but it's the business skills that run and grow the business. I think EOS is one of those things that if you implement that in your business, my goodness, that gives you the structure, right? My cousin told me I need to put an affiliate link to the Traction book and all the podcast descriptions because I talk about EOS so much. So if you haven't read the book, read Traction. I want a question for you though, because I think this is the big kind of a thing in the EOS system. Being a visionary, you need the integrator, right? Like they are the lifeblood of your existence to me, right? Like, and so how did you find your integrator? What makes a good integrator in your roofing company?
So when I read the book, I would tell you Traction is a great book to read. It's like the encyclopedia of how to do everything. For you visionaries out there that are a little bit ADHD, that can't sit down and read and get a little bit bored, I would read Rocket Fuel first.
Fuel, yeah.
That'll give you a sample size of what's in Traction, but it'll speak more to like your skills as a creative visionary. And I think that you'll like that book more. So it'll get you more interested to then read Traction. So that's where I would start first. And then when I read about that book and it talked about all these good things that I do, and I'm like, yeah, I'm super creative. Yeah, I have a million ideas. Yeah, I'm really good at big relationships. Yeah, I'm really good at culture and like keeping people happy. And I'm great with customers. And then when they read all the stuff that integrators are good at, I'm like, yeah, I'm bad at that. Oh my God, I've been doing it. Oh God. And it just became really clear.
Really clear, right? Yeah.
Like you can't be two people, right? But you need two people to like be able to coexist. And in the best companies of the world, when you look at it, Walt Disney had Roy Disney. Steve Jobs had a full team of other people to like execute his vision. He had Wozniak in
Wozniak,
right?
Yeah.
And that dude's just, some rich dude's like doing whatever he wants to do now. I don't even think you don't have to work another day in his life. And just because he was the guy, he would listen to Steve and just build the computers and, nerd out while Steve was out trying to sell stuff and sell these boxes, for whatever he sold them for to create Apple. And so you realize that if all these big successful companies have that, well, why don't we have that in our little, $5 million roofing company? And it's because nobody's ever modeled that.
Yep.
And so now there's a whole generation, thank God for Gino Wickman, that people are able to embody, and we're able to try to figure that out. And so now we're able to develop at a little bit faster rate. And you see a lot more successful roofing companies coming up than you ever have. I know you've been in this world for a while, and you're probably like, wow, look at all these amazing roofing companies. And we still have. There might be more roofs, but the proportion of successful roofing companies versus the amount of roofs that are out there.
It's crazy.
There's no correlation.
I talk about this. I was speaking at a ICO Profit Power event here in Minneapolis, and so I know a lot of people in town. And I looked around the room, and I'm like, my goodness, there's a $250 million in sales in this room, and not everyone is here. Right?
The markets are huge, even in your own market. If you can even have 1% of your market, you're in the Twin Cities, right?
Yeah.
If you could have 1% of your market, you'd be like a $40 million contract.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so, and I go back to your question about how I found my integrators. When I read that book, they defined this integrator. I knew a guy that had all these skills. And I always knew that I needed somebody with more logic and more numbers and fiscally responsible and things like that, had more management and I call it the detail work, that likes to go in and have the same meeting all the time. And when I read that, I kept thinking about this guy in my head. And so I called him up. I said, hey, you got to read this book. And his name's Rob. And at the time, he was the head of accounting and finance at this $50 million HVAC company. And he was on his way to get promoted to be CFO. And I reached out to him in October of 2020. And I said, hey, you got to read this book. I said, I think you're my integrator. I said, I know you're going to think that's weird. I said, but just read it and come back to me and tell me what you think. Because he knew me because we had talked. He'd actually done some of my bookkeeping on the side and some of my cleanup of my stuff on a month-end basis. And so he kind of seen my growth. And, and it takes a while for these CFO guys to really make decisions, right? Because they're very methodical.
Yeah.
I was ready to hire him day one, but then I realized he made a lot of money. And I was like, I don't think, it's going to be tough. He's like, you think you can afford me? I was like, I don't think I can afford not to have you. Yeah. If I have to overpay you for a little while, so be it. Because at the end of the day, I'm probably going to fail if I don't have someone like you, or I'm going to fail personally. I'm not going to be able to stick with it long enough to really see this thing through. And I'm already 5 years in and I really want to finish strong. I don't want to blow this thing up because I have that tendency, right, to blow things up. And And so he thought about it, and, we made a deal, and he actually, so to really get him, because he had a nice, he's 45 years old, he had still had another 15, 25 years ahead of him, a nice cozy position he had created for himself, being CFO. He had already built his whole financial department. He's built, moved a couple levers, right? Now the work, is hard.
Yeah.
Coming back down to like a $4 million company, right? Like to where it's a lot more rugged, dealing with roofers and customers, and, it's a different world. And so I sold him 25% of my business because at the time I had went through a divorce right before that. And I realized how less valuable my company was because I was the only person that was really keeping it together. Me and my ex-wife found out the hard way that like my business wasn't really worth that much without Benny being in the seat, which I was like, well, that's kind of silly. Like, I don't want to be 65 years old and feel like that. So I sold him equity, and he's like, how much do you want? I'm like, how much do you think it's worth? I said, like, make me an offer.
Yeah.
So he got a really sweet deal. I'll tell you that. But I will say I wouldn't be where I'm at today without him. And at the end of the day, it's been worth every penny. And I hope he feels the same way. I think he does. Because it's another challenge. It was a challenge for me to figure out how to let go.
Yeah.
And it was a challenge for him on how to dive in a little bit deeper and wider and strengthen his skill set from finance to operations to sales to marketing, and to try to, and I think he's realized that there's a whole lot more responsibility that comes into like being, the president or the CEO than just being in one department, head over one department, right? Because, you can master your little domain, and that's one thing. What do you think your biggest specialty is, Jim, is in marketing? Is it SEO? Is it social? Is it paid ads?
It's just, it's communicating with customers around what really connects with them. So my thing is the content, man, and the omnipresent strategy of it. So we both come from the school of Gary V. Long form content into short form content, go. Like that's that, like, but value. Like, I don't care about selling anything. I don't care if I don't mention what we do on the podcast ever, right? It's like, if I provide value in your life, like, that's what I feel. And then my skill set, or what I've found joy in it, is in that. I feel like my self-awareness, I'm a teacher. Like, I feel like I'm a teacher in a way, right? I really enjoy the communication of ideas to other people and helping and seeing them grow and seeing them succeed and things like that. That's where I've been.
What I'm saying, though, is like, you're really good at that, right? And I can tell because like you're excited even talking about it. But when I tell you to manage your bookkeeping for your company,
it's horrible,
and then have to hire a bunch of people to like, see what I'm saying? And so like right now, I can already feel it, right? That's why you probably have other good people at your company that are helping you with some of that stuff, right? And so that way you can get back to doing what you're good at.
I used to say, Benny, I hire what I procrastinate on. Anytime I procrastinated on something, I'm like, so I need to hire this position next, right? So whether that was the bookkeeping or whether that was whatever it was, whatever I procrastinated on, if I procrastinated on picking up the phone for a sales call, I needed to hire a salesperson. If I procrastinated on shooting some video for content, I would have hired someone, whatever I procrastinate on, man, that's where I like
that.
Yeah.
That's a post. Hire for what you procrastinate with.
Right?
I like that.
Let's talk about marketing a little bit, because we don't have a whole lot of time left, and that's like, I think that's been your passion, and you talked about it, and joining up with Joseph Hughes and Contractor Dynamics and all the fun stuff you guys do over there, helping these guys get 5 Mile famous, right? One thing that when you kind of went down that path a little bit ago, what was making me think is, no agency for your roofing business is going to be able to be the end-all be-all for you for the price you are able to invest in your marketing dollars from a roofing agency or from a roofing company, right? Like, you're going to have to go out and spend a whole lot of money if you want someone else to build your brand and do that yourself. So what tips can you provide to roofing contractors? I'm sure we could talk for another 3-4 hours about this, right? Like, we'll do another one. Exactly. Let's do another one. But let's give them a little teaser right now. Like, what are the things? Because to us, the better that, to the way I feel it, the better that our contractors that we work with are able to show their authenticity through video, images, the way they communicate through, the projects that they do, the reviews that they get, the communicating their customer journey, the better that they can do there, the better that we can do in the performance-based advertising stuff, in their Facebook ads, in their Google ads, in things like that.
Yep. Yeah. And the first thing is because the more the more you don't have like a vision and a plan and know where you're headed, the more mistakes you're going to make along the way because you don't have rails, right?
Yeah.
You don't have, like, I look at it like bowling. It's like, imagine, in marketing, we want to put up some bumper rails so that way we can kind of stay between, because literally without them, the universe is as wide as possible.
Right.
And every time something pops up, you can just say yes to. And so what's going to happen is you can learn. That's how you're going to learn the old fashioned way. And that's the way I had to figure it out, through testing and through like just a lot of pain, right? And so when Joseph Hughes came along with Contractor Dynamics, and I met up with him, and he asked me, he's like, well, how'd you get your business to be so successful? And I'm like, well, dude, there was a lot of pain, a lot of trial and error, and a lot of just like pure grit force that I had to like figure this out. I said, if I would have had a program like yours, first of all, when I started, I said I would have probably been in a lot better shape. I was also probably too stubborn to know that I wanted to invest in something like that, because, so it's like the chicken or the egg. But the biggest thing I could tell people is, first of all, you got to be really good at doing what you're doing. Like, as far as sales and product, operations go, you have to deliver a great product and service, right? And so you have to be super consistent with that. And then you have to tell the story. And you have to tell your company story. You have to tell a story about yourself. You have to tell a story about your customers and then in your community. And once you can keep that story going and then distribute it out through all kinds of different mechanisms, right? Whether it's, through blog articles for SEO, whether it's social media posts on Facebook, whether it's community events, in addition to being a really great operation, kind of like Chick-fil-A is. Like, when Chick-fil-A is delivering you the chicken sandwich, and it's the same way every time, and you're getting 5-star reviews, like, that's what you need to be on the ground game. And then your marketing department can just keep telling that story, because Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, they're not coming to your house to do pieces on you every day. So you're not going to get publicity. And if you really want to grow and you really want to be able to get to where you can live your life by design, you're going to need more people and you're going to need more customers. And the way to do that is through a great brand and a consistent marketing strategy, and being able to be the GC of your marketing department, the general contractor. And so we have, what I've learned by working with 60 different companies at Contractor Dynamics in their program, I've learned that, like, most of them are just so focused on sales and ops that they've and for good reason, they never knew that there was another world out there, because they've been so busy being busy. When you can take a step back and really start to think about your business, brand is what's really going to allow you to have a freedom. And so brand equals freedom. And, and not everybody is fortunate enough to be able to invest in the Contractor Dynamics program. It's a pretty high ticket offer. It's for people that really have a marketing manager, because we found that most owners can't sit still long enough to put the 20 hours a week in that it's necessary to really get this thing started. And so, and I'm sure you've had customers like this before, where like it's the owner and they go back to being a firefighter and you can't get a hold of them. They can't get a hold of you. You don't know what to put up for them. So then you just throw something up and then they're not happy. It's just, it's a bad situation. So what we're trying to do is educate our contractors. And one of the other things that we just started is we just started a lower ticket mastermind, to where maybe people that don't have a marketing manager yet, that want to get a little bit of Benny and Joe, get a little bit of community with other contractors. We've started that, and that's been really helpful, because we've been able to bring in guest speakers. We just had Chuck Toki as a guest speaker yesterday.
Chuck's so awesome.
Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah. And we can bring all the different awesome people of the industry in. Yeah. So that way we know they're in good hands, because the fastest way that I learned was going to events, conferences, connecting with other like-minded people like yourself and some of the other good ones in the industry, and learning from them, but more so learning from the other contractors, what worked for them, what didn't work for them, figuring out what I wanted to pick out of that. Because, you as the owner or the CEO still have to pick what you want to do.
That's right.
You're not going to just do it Ben's way or Jim's way. Like, you got to still do it your way, but you can take a little bit of Ben, a little bit of what didn't work for Ben, a little bit of what worked for Jim, a little bit of what didn't work for Jim, mix up all the ingredients for your own self, and then poof, you out like a nice little baby. But then you have to grow.
That's what this show is all about, man, is getting just having conversations about all of these lessons, all the mistakes, all the things that went well, so people can pick and choose around that. Just to close us out here, what do you think the greatest insight is that you could share with our audience that's really helped you find success with big fish roofing?
I would say learning about emotional intelligence. I didn't even know what those words meant for a while, and when I joined Sales Transformation Group, and I started because I wanted to get out of sales, right? And so I started like hearing some of what Ryan Groth was teaching. And he gave me a book called Emotional Intelligence 2.0, and it really made me become aware that like maybe I'm not saying things the best way because maybe Ben hasn't been taught to communicate in a way that's more macro based to where like everyone can hear me. But, like the only people that would ever hear me were the people that were just identical to me. And the problem with that is we don't need a bunch of Bens running around or this place is going to be crazy. So I needed to figure out a way to be able to communicate with others in a loving way, in a kind way, to be able to get my vision like to everyone else so that way they could continue the mission. And so for me, that's the one thing that I've learned. And I took a test when I first started and I was like a 50, like an emotional intelligence test. And I came out at 50 out of 100. And I just tested, about a year ago, and I was like in the high 80s. And I was like, wow, that's one thing to where you can actually educate yourself, learn, practice, and get better over time to become more self-aware. Because to get better at anything, I think you need to have some type of an awareness level. And then there's always different levels of awareness. Once you unpack that first level, then there's like, oh, there's another level and there's another level. And I'm still not even completely aware of how I'm being right now. And I'll probably figure that out.
That's right.
And there'll be another level. And so that's kind of fun. And that's the one thing that I found is interesting because you cannot change your IQ, like what you were, the ability for you to process and take in information, but you can practice affect your emotional intelligence. And I believe that EQ is the secret sauce to any great leader, because you can throw IQ out the window. Because at the end of the day, people want to feel heard, people want to feel respected, people want to feel loved, and I think EQ is what gives that to them. So that's the secret sauce.
Awesome, man. This has been another episode of the Roofing Success Podcast. Thank you for tuning into the Roofing Success Podcast. For more valuable content, visit roofingsuccesspodcast.com. While there, check out our sponsors for exclusive offers, shop for merchandise, and sign up for our newsletter for industry updates and tips. Also, join the Roofing Success Facebook group to connect with other professionals and stay updated on the latest trends. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, like, share, and leave a comment. Your support helps us continue to bring you top industry insights. The website link is in the description. Thanks for listening.